Okay, we can have the rest of you back there grab a seat real quick. We'd like to get this started. A lot of information, and this ought to be a great event. For those of you who are new to the NorthFront Business Resource Center, we welcome you. My name is Steve Cloud. I'm the director of the NorthFront Business Resource Center, and also a member of the board for the NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance, which we hope all of you are members of. If you're not, it's really, really easy to become one, and the price is right since it's free. But you have an opportunity to enjoy events like this about 6 times a year. And so we encourage you to do so. Log into northfront.org or northfrontbrc.org. Either one will get you there. Before you leave today, if there's any interest on any of the services that are provided by the NorthFront Business Resource Center, there'll be a brochure back on the back table as you leave. You're welcome to pick one up. There are just a tremendous number of resources that are available throughout the building for you, most of them either free or low charge. With that, we're going to get this started. I'm going to introduce a major supporter of the Business Resource Center and entrepreneurism in general, Craig Bott, who is going to be the MC for today's event as we learn just a little bit more about Kickstarter.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Welcome. Again, an informal event. We invite you to get cozy and enjoy this. I'm excited about today's event. I think the topic is just thrilling. We're going to give some brief introduction, then we're going to get right into the meat of the program. But the food's still at the back. If you feel like you need to go back to refresh your plates, you feel comfortable in doing that. I'm proud to be associated with NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance. My real role is with Grow Utah Ventures. We're a privately funded nonprofit dedicated to sponsoring and promoting entrepreneurism in Utah. And so we're pleased to be a supporter of NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance. We feel really that these are the kinds of things that are significant. What's NorthFront about? I gave you a little bit of a list, founded a few years ago because there was an interest to organize an ecosystem in northern Utah that would be supportive of you in starting your businesses, so you don't feel that you're alone, that there are resources, places that you could come. That predated the building that you're in, the resources that are here now, and I think it's a testament to those in this community who support business startup as a way to stimulate economic development. If you want to find more or follow NorthFront, those sites are listed. Please become a fan and a friend with the NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance. There's some specific resources available to you here that are a little non-traditional. Counseling and mentorship being one of those. There is a board of advisors for the NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance that's willing to meet with you to answer your questions, to get some idea of, or give you some input on issues of concern to you. You can access that by the phone number or the email. And Steve has a slate of services from training to coaching to incubation space here. I'd certainly make yourself available to all of those resources that are part of NorthFront. Couldn't happen without the contribution of an advisory board. Love to recognize those who are from the advisory board here today. Damon, I see you here are others. Members of the advisory board, Nicole, you're here. Would you please stand and be recognized? And they deserve a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. I saw Sam there too. And this kind of an initiative is supported by a lot of public-private partners. And I think, again, that speaks to the encouragement of entrepreneurship, specifically here in northern Utah. We're appreciative of all of those and what they do. There are some upcoming events you might want to just pencil in that are pretty important. One is the NorthFront Launch-Up event. That's a very informal way of getting together with people who might be in the same stage you are in and building your business. You come, you learn from each other, you launch up the business, get a lot of expertise and a lot of cross-sharing of ideas. Circle that date for September 19th. This forum. We'll meet again on October 17th. We'd love to have you come back here on the 17th for another great day of food and topics. Pro Utah Ventures and NorthFront are sponsors of two contests, which are a great way to get seed money to start your business. One is a medical device contest for concepts in the medical device field. The evaluation is done by a set of professionals in that. The prizes are $45,000 in cash and services to really help move your business along. So if you have any kind of inkling or know of anybody who's interested in the medical device field, great contest. And then beginning in September, there'll be a kickoff for the mobile application contest. Anything that's created for delivery on a mobile application or on a mobile device, phone, tablet, whatever. We'd love to have you apply for that contest. The judging of that will occur later in November. You get information about both of these contests at conceptcompany.org. We sure encourage you to come and apply for that. The funds, the expertise, and resources are there available for you. I want to introduce one new service that's being offered through Grow Utah Ventures and NorthFront Entrepreneur Alliance. It's the Elite Entrepreneur Learning Initiative. We felt a need for some time of providing some very fine-tuned training that goes beyond pitch training. A lot of the training in Utah is how do you pitch to investors, but what do you do after your pitch, or how do you prepare for that? How do you know if you have a good idea? How do you qualify ideas? How do you get customer feedback? And so we've organized the Elite series of training that will bring together training courses that we think really have some merit. The first one that will be offered here through Steve's Business Resource Center in partnership with them is the Nail It, Scale It training program. If you're interested in lean startup and all that's implied with customer validation and minimal viable product and the whole lean startup movement, Dr. Nathan Furr from BYU wrote essentially a hands-on book called Nail It, Scale It on how to go through the process of creating a business in that lean startup methodology. That's been turned into a one-day seminar taught by the people who are associated with Dr. Furr. We're proud to present that as part of the Elite Training Series. You'll hear some more about that coming up. If you happen to be in Dixie, this flyer is for one that will occur down in Dixie in September. We're setting the schedule now with Steve, and we'd love to have you come and participate in those things. Enough advertisements. Cool. Well, today we're really here to talk about the power of crowds and the Kickstarter experience. I'm interested to know by raise of hands how many here for our panelists are starting or in the process of launching their business. Okay, panel, you've got peers out in the audience. Always one of the challenges in starting a business is how do I get money and how do I get it at various stages? How do I get enough to prove my concept to people who would fund me more money to build my business? And some real innovative ideas and solutions for funding have come about recently, Kickstarter or crowdfunding being one of those. Let me give you a few facts, and then we're going to hear from our three panelists who've had specific experience. What is crowdfunding? Well, it's essentially funding a project through small contributions from a crowd of people who independently make a decision to invest in your business. The fundamental philosophy or doctrine or research behind it is crowd decisions generally are better than individual decisions. A lot of academic research kind of demonstrates this. So taking that idea, matching it with selecting business opportunities on a crowd and investing small amounts, that's the idea of crowdfunding. When did it all begin? Well, it's kind of in the process of beginning. Really in 2009, Kickstarter was initiated and really became operational in 2010. So you're not too late to this party. If you don't know much about it, it's a fairly new idea. Kickstarter to date, since 2010, has had about 68,000 projects, meaning they're kind of product-based businesses go through the Kickstarter program. Of those 68,000, they're asking on an average for about $1,000 to $10,000 to launch their business. So you can see right there, oh, well, I'm not getting $500,000 here. I'm getting enough to prove concept. I'm getting enough to launch a business. I'm getting enough to actually introduce my product into the marketplace and preparing me to go and raise some additional funding. 44% of those that have applied to Kickstarter are successful in reaching their target goal. That's pretty significant. I like that number. In fact, you can't find that kind of a number in any other financing vehicle. And 275 million has been invested from crowd people in products. How many here have actually been on the investor side of a Kickstarter project? Okay, we've got a few of us who've gone online, looked at the slate of companies and products, put your credit card in, donated $50 to $60 to a project. That's how easy it is. 275 million times over that has been done. What's on the crest, what's coming next year if the SEC works out all of the regulations, are what was enabled with the Jobs Act that Congress and the President signed recently, which is equity-based crowdfunding. So Kickstarter is essentially a pre-order of a product. I pitch a product, you say, I'd like to buy that. I don't have the product yet. We'll use your money to go build it, and you'll get the pre-orders, you'll get the first orders of my product. Essentially that idea. I'm not owning your business, I'm pre-ordering the product. 2013, the SEC works out through all the details. I'll actually be able to take a piece of your business by a crowdfunding approach. So that's nice to set aside. We're not going to talk a lot about that today, but that's where the crowdfunding movement is going. How does it work? Well, you post some kind of creative project. We'll show you some details around that. Choose a deadline. I'm going to have it open for a certain period of time and a certain dollar amount I'm trying to raise. And if the goal is reached, then funds are collected. If I'm asking for $10,000 to launch my new widget, but I only get commitments from $8,000 worth of you, then I don't collect any money. I can get more than $10,000 and I'll collect all that money. Kickstarter is an organization, is a company, a group out of New York, and they take about 5% off the top of what's raised. So that's how they operate. What are the risks? Most of the risks are on the investor side, surprisingly. The risk is that they won't deliver their product. They'll collect my money, they don't have any obligation to actually put it together and build it. Maybe they find some new obstacle they can't overcome, and I'm out my $50, $60 or whatever. That's the risk, primarily to it. Might be open a little bit to scams. There's some that are kind of saying, yes, you better watch this a little carefully. But the risk is really on your side as an investor. Let's take a look at some numbers. These are hard to see. Maybe you've got some monitors on the side. The potential, the highest raising projects. Number one is the Pebble e-paper watch. Over $10 million was raised through small increment amounts in a crowdfunding format down to around $950,000. You see some categories here: design, video games, music, board games. So these are getting into some serious money when they're around $10 million. Kickstarter has a variety of categories. You have to pick a category and say, my project, my product fits this category. And if you look at all the successful projects that have been funded, you can see that a lot of the Kickstarter success is coming in kind of the creative art side. Film or dance or a piece of art or a piece of music. The category we're really talking about here today is the technology category and a little bit the design category. Those two categories fit a little bit more technology, although there are some in the gaming side that might have interest here today. And when you look at how the money is raised across those categories, well, again, most of the money is coming into film and video. So if you have a creative bent and you're interested in that, I'd apply for that. You see, though, some $9 million in technology. You've got $31 million that's been raised in design, again for products. Gaming, $22 million. So some pretty good money in small amounts. What we want to show you today is for not a huge amount of effort on your part as an entrepreneur. It takes, for those that are successful, about 38 days. I'm not taking months. I'm putting my project out there. If I'm successful, I'm raising money in about 38 days. This is a quick way. If I'm not successful, I'm failing in about 43 days. So a little shorter time period. And the successful projects average about $5,500, meaning I'm asking for a smaller amount from the investors. I'm not coming out and putting on a product that's seeking a couple $100,000. I'm saying, This is about a $5,000 to $10,000, $5,000 to $8,000. I have more likelihood of succeeding with a smaller number than I'm trying to go after the larger number. Nice figure here that 8.5% raise more than they actually asked for. So they oversubscribe, they get more people interested. And instead of getting my 8,000, I get 20,000, I get whatever. And we're oversubscribing. Okay, so that's the backbone of it. Now we want to see actually how it really works from your side of the table, from entrepreneurs. And we have 3 very successful entrepreneurs who have participated in Kickstarter, based here in Utah. Let me introduce them. I'll ask them to wave their hand. Caleb Light from PowerPot. Caleb is from Montana originally, loves working in the outdoors, came up with some real creative ideas around the PowerPot. He is currently the CFO of Power Practical, which is his 3rd business, so he definitely is a serial entrepreneur. We'll hear a minute from Caleb. David Alden. David is with Recoil Winders, a native of Colorado, but now is relocated into Park City. We're glad that he is here. He has product development expertise in sports and snowboarding, classical wood carver, a fine home builder, and has a really interesting recoil winder product that he's just launched through Kickstarter and now is moving forward with the business. And Pat Crawley, in the middle, from Chapool, which is an interesting connection to his background. He's a whitewater rafter, very much into environmental protection, and was looking at the impact that insects have on drought and water usage, and said, I think I can eat those insects. Let me put them into an energy bar. So we're going to hear a little bit about Chapool insect energy bars. We're kind of excited about that. Now, one of the key things about pitching on Kickstarter is you have to present a video. Essentially, that's how the pitch is made. Representing all 3 of these, I'm going to show you the PowerPod video that they put on for Kickstarter, and Caleb will then turn the time over to you.
Hi Kickstarters, I'm Paul. And I'm David, and this is our invention, the PowerPod. The PowerPod is a portable thermoelectric generator that creates power for USB devices as you heat water inside it. Please enjoy our video.
Development of the PowerPod began in 2007 when we got our hands on some thermoelectric models. You can buy them online, and what they do is take a temperature difference and turn it directly into electricity with no moving parts. We began with taking old pods from my mom and modifying them to suit our needs. Eventually we developed a pod that produced a usable amount of power, even if it wasn't super pretty. After designing a working generator, we still had problems to overcome. First, we needed a power regulator to safely charge electronic devices. We also had to fireproof components and improve its overall portability. All of these developments led us to the current PowerPod, which we need your help to scale production. It's essentially a backpacking pod that makes electricity as you heat water inside of it. To use the PowerPod, you simply pour in water, place the pod on a fire, and plug in whatever you want to power it. Charging will begin within seconds. The PowerPod is a 5-watt generator that will put up to an amp into your USB devices. All the cabling is fire resistant, and we've encapsulated all the electronic parts to prevent them from getting wet and dirty. The PowerPod has a regulated USB output with an LED indicator to conveniently charge your cell phone, MP3 player, and much more. It's portable, compact, and weighs about half a pound. You can put everything you need inside the pod and have a charger ready to go anytime, anywhere. It works as long as you can create a big enough temperature difference between the bottom of the pod and the contents inside, so you can get creative, like using a geothermal hot spring with some snow. The PowerPod is a useful addition to any sort of adventure. Now you don't have to worry about having a pile of batteries to keep all your electronic gizmos going, or hope that the sun will be shining when you need it. You can charge up your headlamp at night while you cook up some ramen, and run speakers all evening powered by campfire. The PowerPod is also great for home preparedness. You can get one for yourself or your loved ones, and the next time the power goes out, you can use your gas stove or even a candle to charge your cell phone. There are many people in developing nations who don't have reliable access to electricity at home that still use cell phones. Most of them build fires every day for cooking, and the power pot would fit into their daily routine, saving them time and money otherwise spent searching for power.
As a backer of our project, not only can you pre-order yourself a power pot, but you can also pre-order a power pot for someone around the world who needs a USB charger powered by fire. We're also offering an array of gadgets including batteries, lights, and stoves.
This 5-watt model works great for charging handheld devices such as cell phones and MP3 players. But if you need more power, we're also offering this 10-watt model, which will power larger devices such as tablets. Please back our project now. Thanks for watching.
Cool, Caleb, we're going to turn it over to you with a round of applause. Thank you. We're going to let them make presentations, and then we'll come to some Q&A, so save your questions.
All right. Well, the two guys that were in the video, that's David and Paul, they're two material science engineers that actually invented the power pot. I joined Power Practical's team back in August or September to kind of assist in accounting / business development. And so, just kind of start off real quick, how many of you guys out there own a cell phone? Raise your hand. So, how many of you have been in a situation where you've like had your cell phone and you got a really important text or email or phone call? You go to send it or make a call and your phone dies. And your stomach like crinkles up and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Where's my wall charger? Right? Has any of that happened to you like me? So that's kind of what we're playing off of with this idea of personal power. And so Power Practical is a company that focuses on personal power devices. And our first product that we have launched, as you saw, is the Power Pot. And it's, like they said in the video, it's a portable thermoelectric generator. And so, like David was explaining, it just takes a temperature difference. So if you can imagine, here is my Power Pot that I've stuck over many campfires. Sorry, I forgot to bring a new one in. But right here below the bottom of the pot, there's this aluminum plate. And in between that gap, there's those little modules that he showed. And so in essence, what it does, it takes the temperature on the bottom of the pot, and there's a special material that pushes electrons from hot to cold. And then the next material pushes electrons from cold to hot. And so they're stacked in series. And so if you can imagine, it's just funneling current between the hot and the cold side. The hot being the fire and the cold being the water, because it's relatively colder than fire. And so it's super simple to use. You just take your fire. Well, I'll just fire it real quick to show you how quick it is. So I put a little bit of water in this power pot, and I'm going to fire up the stove and plug it in, and you can see how quick it'll fire up this LED light. So just turn on the stove, and then you set the power pot on there, then you take your regulator, which this end plugs into the back of the pot, and then you just have your standard USB output. So we'll plug it in, and as you see, this little green light lights up on the regulator box, and you just plug in whatever USB device and you have power. So pretty quick, within about 10 to 15 seconds. And then it will continue to produce power for a minute or so, depending on how hot the bottom of the pot is. So we, back in probably January, we decided that we wanted to go on Kickstarter. And we ended up deciding that we were going to do a 30-day campaign because we read some blogs and it talks about there's an inverse bell curve during the duration of your project. Meaning in the beginning you see a lot of traction, and then it kind of slopes off in the middle of the project, and then when it gets towards the end you see another spike. So we decided to do 30 days because they recommended that. That's what I read was the recommended length. And we wanted to raise $50,000. And so after our 30-day campaign, we ended up raising $126,000 with a little over 1,000 backers. So that was really awesome. And we were super stoked and still are super stoked. So why did we decide to use Kickstarter? Well, I am part of a group in Salt Lake, and there's also one in Utah Valley called The Foundry. And it's a peer-to-peer mentoring model for entrepreneurs. And their like big push is like, what's the quickest and cheapest way to validate what you're working on, whether you're right or wrong. And so a lot of my colleagues in the Foundry had decided to use Kickstarter. Many of them have had successful campaigns. One guy's like crowdfunded 4 or 5 different projects. He does board games, and that's how he launches his product. He's been successful over and over again, which is really cool. And so we decided to use Kickstarter because they had used it and it had been successful. we wanted to validate that there's an actual market for a thermoelectric power generator, because there isn't one that exists on the kind of consumer market nowadays. And we looked at Kickstarter as like a self-funding test, right? What's better than running a test to validate what you're working on and having someone else pay for it? So we felt like that was a good win-win. And there's really no risk. Like if it doesn't fund, then you're out the sweat equity of building the video and the project on the platform, which is just a matter of time. And the goal of the first of our Kickstarter was to fund our first production run. And then we also wanted to pilot through a kind of a humanitarian aspect, the developing nations and how we can hopefully bring power to those people and empower them. And so we had a few different reward levels. We had 3 models of the power pod. The one that I have here is a 5-watt generator. That means it'll charge any of your handheld electronics, your cell phones, your GPSs, your headlamps. The power pod 10, which is right here, that's a 10-watt generator. That's more for tablets. And then we have the power pod 15, which is roughly a 15-watt generator. And then we also had reward levels around, this is a little battery pack, so not only can you create energy, but you can store it. And then we also had these little LED lights. And then we had a humanitarian aspect where at a certain dollar amount, someone could just buy a power pot and give it to someone else in a developing nation. And we also had another pledge level where someone could buy one and donate one at the same time. So we actually had enough money given to us so that we can send 100 power pots to people that don't have access to power, which we think is really cool.
So explain how you qualify for these different awards, different pricing structure.
Yeah, there's just, and the pricing structure is totally arbitrary. You can decide what, however much the reward level is and what it is. So it's totally up to you. And so we just did the crunch the numbers, and we figured out that for 99 bucks, we could, for 99 bucks, you could give a power pot to someone in a developing nation. And for $199, you could buy one and give one. And if you just wanted one for yourself, then for $125, you got a power pot, a battery, and a light. And then we had $150, and we had ranging from $1 to $1,000, and we had people give us money at all levels. So some of the reasons that I felt like we succeeded is, one, we just had a really sweet product. I don't mean to be conceited or anything, but it's pretty cool. It's a pot that makes electricity. There's not really many pots that make electricity. So the other thing that we did is we paid to have 2 press releases. So we paid $600. The first press release we got picked up by the Wall Street Journal, Engadget, Reddit, CNET, tons of blogs. And as you can see from the Engadget article, 5% of our $126,000 was directly attributed to that article. And then Uncrate converted about 3% of our revenue. So that definitely paid for our press releases. That's super awesome. And then we also had our website up and running, and we were funneling all traffic back to our Kickstarter page. Everything that was public facing was funneling to our Kickstarter project. That included social media, and then we had attended a couple trade shows, and so we had really specific demographics around the outdoor space, email addresses. And so we emailed them, and we saw a certain percent of those people back us on our projects that we had talked to at trade shows. So this is just a little graph of the 30 days and the kind of where our funding level was. And so on day 10, right here, we actually hit our $50,000 mark. And right here, we jumped like 17,000 in sales. And that was the day that the Wall Street Journal picked us up and Engadget. So we did the press release on day 1 when we had our link to our Kickstarter video. And then it took about 5 days or so for it to kind of funnel through, and then just like boom, hit, and it was crazy. So as you can see, we had the spike there, and then it kind of plateaued off in the middle of our project, and then we had some nice kind of growth towards the end. So you see kind of the inverse bell curve. So since Kickstarter, which ended May 4th, we have about 20% of our web traffic on our website, and 20% of our conversions come directly from our Kickstarter page, which is pretty cool. Even though our project's closed, people are still finding it, and they find it, and then they find our website, and they buy power pots from us, which we're pretty excited. The other cool thing is we've been contacted by people all over the world. I've got emails from probably distributors in 10 to 20 different countries, and we've been contacted by like the camp provider at Bass Pro Shops and a lot of other people that have just found us from our press releases and from Kickstarter. And honestly, Kickstarter is really hot right now. If you have a successful campaign, people kind of grab onto that and they think it's really cool. And so right now we are, whoops, dropped in. So we're about 3/4 of the way being fulfilled on all of our Kickstarter orders in terms of production. We're producing power pots just right in North Salt Lake. We have 1,300 square foot assembly, factory, light manufacturing, whatever. And that's where we're building it. And so we're gearing up through funding conversations for a big retailer push and to get our second and third production run going. And that's all attributed to our success on Kickstarter. You know, those small incremental steps that help us get from an idea and a cool like prototype to getting sales and getting customer feedback to looking at how are we realistically going to scale this and what is our strategy and how much money is that going to cost us. And then the other thing that we are looking at doing over the next couple months is kickstarting our next product launch. And so our business model now will include crowdfunding. Before we launch any products into stores or whatever, we want to crowdfund it to vet it. So we think it's an awesome low-risk way of vetting whether what you're working on is right or wrong to help us kind of execute on that. And so, let's see, what would we do differently? I think one of the big areas that we didn't capitalize on was Twitter. So like in the middle of our crowdfunding campaign, I just got on Twitter one day randomly. I'm not like a huge Twitter person, tweeter. And I searched the Power Pod, and I like literally could scroll for like so long about tweets on the Power Pod. And tons of people were talking about it, but we had like really no presence within that space, which is unfortunate because it was like blowing up and we just didn't capitalize on it. So maybe our campaign would have been better, I don't know. So that's something we're really going to focus on. And then the other thing we're going to focus on is just being more diligent on posting comments and replying to comments, and then maybe telling a little better story to our backers during the whole process of when the campaign closes through fulfillment. Not that we've necessarily done a bad job. We don't have people complaining or anything. I just think that we could maybe do a little bit better, because the idea of continually launching projects on Kickstarter is the idea of building a community around your business and like what you're doing. Because we've had 1,000 people back us, so how many people are going to back us in our next project, and how many of those 1,000 people will back us a second time and maybe a third time? And so I think that will kind of help us with building and maintaining more of a community. And so that is my presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Well done. Save your questions. I know you've got a few, David. We're going to invite you up.
I hope this means I don't need the handheld.
You do need the handheld. That's
I
really
do need
good.
the handheld, okay. Hi, my name is David Alden. I'm with Recoil, as I've been introduced, and appreciate the chance to be able to talk to you guys about Kickstarter. I think by now you have a pretty rough idea of what the model looks like, this all-or-nothing crowdfunding platform. I think one point that hasn't been made thus far is that it's all or nothing. When you pick a funding goal for Kickstarter, if you do not, backers pledge money, they give their credit card number, and if you don't meet your funding goal, their credit card is never charged. So it's really low risk to the backers. As soon as you reach your funding goal, the credit card charges and it proceeds. So that's just a sort of a random note. Let me first show you what Recoil is. You've probably all seen this in your luggage or your pocket or your desk, tangled chargers and headphones. I'm going to put this down and just speak loud. So I think this is pretty indicative of the process that a lot of us go through each time we want to use our headphones, of having to untangle them every time. So we came up with the recoil cord winder, which you fold your cord in half, you put the cord into the winder, you give it a little pull, and your cords are stored and wound up and ready to take off the next time you use them. We have 3 different sizes: small one for small headphones like White Apple earbuds, a medium size for USB cords, and larger headphones, and then up to the large size for things like cell phone chargers and other chargers, and it winds and stores your cords. We also have this little rack that helps stand them up and keep them organized. Okay, now that you know what recoil the product is, let's we launched late winter. We were trying to raise $10,000, and within 40 days we had reached the $141,000 mark, which was a huge surprise to us and a really nice surprise. We had about 3,000 backers, which, while wonderful, caused a set of challenges that we had not anticipated, but generally it was a real nice surprise. I'm going to blow by some of this stuff that has to do with why I decided to invent a cord winder and put all the time and effort into such a simple little device as a cord winder, and get right on to some of the Kickstarter relevant issues. I think most of you are familiar with the way you fund a startup now. You can use your personal money. You can mooch money from the family, your friends and family. You can find early stage investors. I know some of those are here in the audience now, and that's a pretty good route. You give up a lot of your company at the front end when you have the least value for your company, and but a very traditional and legitimate way to go. You can rob a bank, or you can go to Kickstarter. And we decided in lieu of robbing a bank that we would give Kickstarter a shot. Am I ready for Kickstarter? I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make around Kickstarter launches, is they launch before they're ready. Some of the questions we asked ourselves: is the product ready? Is it buildable? Are we sure that we know how to do it? Because once you launch and once you fund, you are committed to ship. And if you don't ship, there is most assuredly going to be at least one attorney who backed your project that you will be hearing from. So you want to make sure that your product is buildable, that it's possible, that the technology exists. You need to ask yourself whether you really know how much your product will cost to build. Because when you pick funding levels, backer levels, and you sell a recoil winder for $10, you better be sure that you know you can build it for less than $10 and ship it before you launch. A point I'll come back to several times because it was a big challenge for us is, do I know how much it costs to ship a recoil winder to every country in the world? Because a successful Kickstarter campaign with 3,000 backers, you will be shipping. We ship to more than 40 different countries. And we had no idea how much it costs to ship a winder to Turkmenistan. And so when we needed to do so, it cost us far more than we had anticipated. That relates directly to, do I have a full fulfillment plan? Do I know how to ship 16,000 recoil winders very quickly and very efficiently out of our kitchen or out of our garage to places like Turkmenistan? And that is a question every Kickstarter should ask themselves before they launch, is, do I know how I'm going to ship if I was successful? And we'll hit that a little bit later. Lastly, can I handle rejection? I think Caleb made the point. There's nothing to lose on Kickstarter, except that feeling of rejection if you don't fund. And if you can see yourself through that process and through that rejection, there's nothing to lose by going to Kickstarter. Low cost, tons of upside, and very little downside. Okay, if you're going to, and I'm going to take a little bit different approach than Caleb did, and I think he covered one angle of it really well, and I thought I'd focus a little bit more on how you actually go through the process of launching a Kickstarter campaign. There's a ton of material out there, lots of blogs and articles and information that should be read before you do, which will give you a lot of great tips. Set your funding goal. Be sure that you ask for enough. Remember, if we asked for $10,000, but the tooling alone to build our recoil winders was more like $50,000. Now, we had an alternate plan for funding that, but had we not had an alternate plan, and had we raised $10,001, we would have had to produce these winders on $10,000, and that wasn't possible. The tooling alone was $50,000. So be sure that you ask for enough with your funding goal that you can actually get the project done. There's a lot that goes into setting a funding goal. I'll be interested to hear you guys' experience on this. We deliberated a long time whether to try to raise $10,000 or $20 or $100, and you'll see across the range as you look at Kickstarter projects. One thing we discovered is that exceeding your funding goal is the best way to get media coverage, because that's when you become a story, and media coverage is what's going to drive a successful Kickstarter campaign. So I encourage people to pick a funding goal that will get the job done, but is low enough that you are likely to exceed it, thereby generating some media and PR. Got to make a video, and I won't go, you can see some points there, I won't go into the details, but the video is your #1 face to the public, and it's pretty important that that's done well. I thought Caleb's was a perfect example. Very effective, to the point, showed some graphics, but wasn't overproduced. People want to support a company that's a grassroots startup company. And I think an overproduced video sometimes takes away from that sense of, I'm backing a real startup company here. And then you've got to create your work categories. Caleb talked a little bit about that. You got to give people something that they want, a fair exchange for their money. And there's a certain science and I think a certain art that goes into creating effective reward categories. Kickstarter definitely needs kickstarting. Things don't go viral on their own, and we would have never got to the 142,000 mark if we had not had a PR plan. I think very different from Caleb's. We didn't just send out 2 press releases, I sent out about 4,000 press releases. And I worked from, I essentially made my full-time job for the entire length of the campaign, pushing the campaign and leveraging social media and leveraging the blogs. And we're in Park City, leveraging the Park Record and the Deseret News and banging on doors and getting media coverage, sending out press release after press release after press release, and generating the kind of interest that drove the traffic for us to reach $142,000. So I think it's all about having a PR plan that's sort of predetermined, preset before you ever launch. Once you're rolling, given that PR really is going to drive this, we publicized our wins every time we got another blog, and we ended up with several hundred blog articles through our campaign, but we would immediately post them on our Kickstarter site. It shows success and demonstrates to people that they're getting involved with something that is positive and is getting good coverage and is likely to get funded. One of the things I heard Caleb say is that he might have handled updates and involving the customers more in the process. I can't agree more. You have a chance to interact with the Kickstarter backers. They feel like they're part of your company, and it's important to make them part of your company. And almost in excess, we posted updates saying, here's what's happening with manufacturing, here's what's happening with production, here's what's happening with media, here's what's happening in the world of recoil, and we had an incredible response to that. People loved, from the same reason you're here, just to learn about the process of launching a product. And each time I would go to our factory, I would take pictures and post them, and people learned a lot about what it takes to prototype a product, to take it to Kickstarter, to manufacture it, to ship it. And we really did post each day that we were shipping pictures of us standing in the kitchen, stuffing envelopes, and we had a terrific response to that. We shared our failures along the way. I say be transparent, people respond. We had we built our tooling, and we had a flaw in the tooling that was going to cause us to ship 3 or 4 weeks late. And we debated greatly around, should we just kind of hide the issue, or should we let people know what's happening? And we decided to let people know what's happening. We demonstrated the problem, we demonstrated the fix, and within an hour of posting that update, we had about 1,000 emails saying how much people appreciated this sort of unheard of honesty about, wow, we really blew it here, and here's what we're going to do to fix it. I think the last one is important. There's a real personal element to Kickstarter. Kickstarter backers really, really want to be a part of what you're doing. They want to get to know the principles, they want to get to know the people involved, and they want to hear from you. And we talk about being personal. I personally responded to every email that we received through these 40 days, and that was about several hundred a day. So I was personally responding to several hundred emails with miscellaneous questions and observations and suggestions, and I think that was one of the biggest contributors to our success, was people getting to know the actual person who had invented it and who was bringing this to market. It really is a personal environment, and while it's this huge community of millions and millions of people, it has a very personal level to it. Social media, I think we all know what the implications there are. Figure out your shipping process and fulfillment early. I can't stress it enough. Just reflect back to trying to ship a package to Turkmenistan when you only collected $4 for international shipping. Make sure your kitchen is big enough to fulfill 3,000 orders, and that you have enough kids in the neighborhood that will help you get that done. Create a focus group for ongoing feedback. We developed a real relationship with our Kickstarter customers, and that has paid off. They reorder product, they tell their friends about it, they post reviews now on Amazon now that we're to market, and our 3,000 Kickstarter backers have been literally the launch point and the start of an entire company. And so developing a really personal relationship with those people really paid off for us. I mentioned here, beware that copycats, if successful. You're very visible with Kickstarter. All over the globe will see you. We were instantly knocked off. We had people actually buy our product and wash our logos off the product, put their own logos on it and sell it. We had people cut and paste our Kickstarter campaign and put it on other crowdfunding sites. So there is a risk to being so globally visible, but I think well worth it. This is sort of the result of a successful Kickstarter campaign. You get to take a project that you started in your mind and in your house and in your garage, and you get to go to a manufacturing facility and see 16,000 pieces being made. That's an exciting moment, I think, for anyone starting a new business, is to see it actually being realized. Here we are in the garage, and you can see we literally did get the neighborhood kids to come and help unload trucks and pack envelopes. One more time I'm going to hit fulfillment, just because that was a particular pain point for us. This is a mountain of shipping labels. And we had these mountains of shipping labels every single day. And it was not an easy process, so be prepared for success and know how you're going to deal with it. And then feel free to contact me anytime with questions, but I think we're going to get a chance to answer a lot of those questions here in the next few minutes.
We'll do it. Thank you, David. We'll turn the time over to Patrick Crowley from Chacool.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm founder of Chapul, and we're making an energy bar that uses flour made from crickets. So I suppose I have some explaining to do here. My background, I do not have a business background. I'm a whitewater rafting guide in the Grand Canyon, all over the West, and I'm a water resource planner. And my career path has been sort of driven by this mission of really wanting to ensure that future generations have an adequate supply of water. And it's very evident from my field that we're on a trajectory where we're sort of outstripping our natural resources at a faster rate than they're being naturally replenished, in particular our water supplies. And we're just growing in demand for our water resources, and it's a finite supply, the availability of it. So one day on my way to work, I was listening to this podcast, TED Talk. If any of you are familiar with TED Talks, I think the slogan is "Ideas to Change the World" or something. There was this Dutch professor that explained all the benefits of eating insects and why we should do that in Western Europe and the United States. It's done in 60 to 80% of the countries around the world, just not here yet, hopefully. And so I started looking at it from water point of view, and the factor that really drove home for me is that the feed to biomass conversion rate. So I'm kind of a dorky scientist here, so bear with me, but for 10 pounds of feed, you get about 1 pound of cow. So you feed 10 pounds of grass, you get about 1 pound of cow out of that. But for insects, in particular crickets, you feed that same 10 pounds of feed, and you get about 8 pounds of crickets. That poundage is a higher quality protein, much more nutritious, lower in fat. And so that particular point drove home for me because I work in agricultural water efficiencies, and it just was like a ringing bell to me. I said, oh man, let's do this. Let's bring on the insects, especially here in the West. So it made sense environmentally, it makes sense from a health standpoint, and really the only thing stopping us is public perception, which is a large barrier. But so I decided to, I looked at other industries that had that same barrier to overcome, and the closest parallel I could draw was the sushi industry. 30 years ago, nobody in this country would have ever thought about eating raw fish, but they very strategically in California developed the California roll. They tried for many years to get Americans to eat sushi. It didn't happen. They developed the California roll. They took the fish out. They put avocado in it. Same consistency. They flipped the nori around. Seaweed's inside out. It's a real gentle introduction. So I decided I had to make a California roll of insects. And that's how I came up with an energy bar. And we make a flour out of the crickets. We chose crickets, fairly benign insect to start with. Make a flour, you don't have to see it, you don't have to see any legs or eyeballs or anything. And the energy bar product is driven by the market that we think will be most receptive to it. People that are in the outdoors are aware of the environment around them. Okay, so that's the background on why fruit bars. So I got the idea last summer, just started toying around with it, playing with the recipes in our backyard, or in our kitchen, growing the crickets in our backyard. And it just incorporated in February, and all along the way, I didn't have much capital. We were bootstrapping. A friend of mine was helping with the project, and all along the way it was a huge community effort. So friends helping out, making the bars. Uncle did the incorporation papers, cousin did the logo and graphics, and Kickstarter, we viewed it as an extension of that community. So we had people pitching in because they liked the idea, and that's what Kickstarter is people seeing an idea and they say, I want to support that idea or that movement. So that's why we decided to go on Kickstarter. So I'll go ahead and start talking about Kickstarter and stop talking about bugs. All right, so just the basics of our Kickstarter project. Our goal was 10,000. We picked a really short project, 18 days. We did a lot of research, and we went with the philosophy that We wanted to build momentum, get a lot of exposure, and then just keep that momentum going all the way to the end of the project. We didn't want any dips in our project, the exposure to it. So real quick, hammer it, and then use it as a kickstart. Get that money and then go on with our business. Total budget was less than $100, but we didn't spend anywhere close to $100. I put an ad on Craigslist for a video intern and got a student at the University of Utah to do our video editing, and yeah, we didn't really spend any money on this. I did all the PR and everything, so you can do this for very cheap. We completed the video and project page, everything in about 4 weeks. We already had a demo product. We had done a product launch, and we had taken video footage of that launch with Kickstarter video in mind. So we had done a little background, but putting everything together was in total about 4 weeks. So minimal time investment. Results, we met our goal on day 10, and we finished with 16,000, which I thought was phenomenal until seeing these guys here with their hundreds of thousands of dollars. 16,000 doesn't seem like much anymore. We had 372 backers, and I think that's one of the biggest advantages of Kickstarter. Not only is it a place where you can raise capital, but you also build a following, essentially. We're trying to build a brand, and every brand needs a core group to follow. So these 372 are our foundation of the culture we're trying to inspire. Average backer pledge on our page is $43. All right, so getting started, first thing, get on Kickstarter and look up successful projects. Look at their incentives, just do your research on other projects. Develop a well-defined project. That's one of the criteria for Kickstarter, is that you have a start to finish goal as a project. You can't just go onto Kickstarter and try and boost your sales. You have to have it has to be a product concept or something along those lines. And what really helps is if you go on your page and you say, I'm trying to raise $10,000 because my kitchen is going to cost us $5,000, and lay out exactly what you're going to do with that money so that that project is really well defined. Set a funding goal. That's been talked about already. Craft your incentives. That's been talked about. That was well spoken. Couldn't agree more. That really know what your margins are for your incentives. So your incentives, again, are if you donate. Our incentives were if you donated $20, you got 6 bars mailed to you. $40, you got a bars and t-shirt, and then up from there, $75 was pure cricket flour. And then up from there, we had one incentive for $1,500, and that was to go on a whitewater rafting trip with the founders of the company. And so we're going rafting this weekend with somebody who donated that little. Establish a timeline. I'm going to get into that a little more because we did all of our PR, and that's really important in your timeline of your project. And then, of course, create your video and your product. So in setting up your funding goal, not all project categories are the same for Kickstarter. Average is somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 for all projects. The biggest ones being design, games, and technology. You can expect to get a lot more money if you fall into one of those categories. But we were in a food category, so we didn't have any illusions of becoming the $10 million project. Because people can go onto Kickstarter and search by project. And so a lot more people are searching in some categories more than others. So I think there's 3 pillars to a successful project from all the research we did and then just from our limited experience. One is your story and how well you tell it. That's been talked about already. Next is your incentives. So this isn't necessarily just a charitable organization, so you have to incentivize people to want to give you money. So really spend some time crafting those. And then site exposure. Having a really good PR, well thought out PR campaign. Okay. So your story, make it as personal as possible, just like David was talking about. I would not, without doing the research prior, I probably would not have put a picture of me on the front page of our project page. my product is not about me, and the company is not about me, but I know that in order to be successful on Kickstarter, you need to make it about you. And you can tell your story. So your video, get in front of the camera. If you're quirky and awkward, people are going to be able to relate to you even more. So don't worry about it. Get in front of the camera. Just tell your story, and just as if you were standing in front of, venture capitalists. They're going to be investing in you as a person just as much as your business, if not more. So the same thing with Kickstarter backers. So get up there and tell them who you are and the person in the face behind the business. I say max 3 minutes on that video. Ours was 3 minutes and 13 seconds, and 56% of people that pressed play watched the end of our video. So I think that percentage would be a lot higher if we had a shorter video. It's hard to cram it all in, but just keep it brief. Attention spans are not very long. Incentives, keep it simple. That's one piece of advice we saw on several blogs about Kickstarter. Just limit the amount of incentives. We had all these great ideas about, give us $500 and we'll make you a cricket costume and you can jump around the neighborhood and selling our bars. But we limited it and we had 5 incentive levels. So one of the most successful strategies, which all 3 of us employed, was offer your product as one of the incentives. And the most successful, the $10 million project, offer it at a discount. So people are giving you their money early, reward them for that. Make sure that you can do that feasibly, and have some other incentives in there with higher margins. So again, as our incentives increased in value, our margins increased as well to kind of buffer against those smaller margin incentive levels. And then smart, really know the costs. We, of course, forgot about things like just packaging tape and ink for printing labels. And so it was higher costs to produce and mail out our incentives than we thought, but not too bad. It was still very feasible. Source of backers. So I'll just talk a little bit more in depth about site exposure. So these are numbers that Kickstarter gave us at the end of our project. Kickstarter, there we go. Kickstarter produced 39% of our traffic. So that means people went onto the Kickstarter page potentially without knowing who we were and found us there, as opposed to 61 coming from externally. So from Facebook or an email or a website. And this number here, just with many things in life, success begets success. So you need to create traffic to your site in order for Kickstarter to find you, or backers on Kickstarter, because we generated a lot of our own support. This pie chart was all 100% external, essentially, for the first 3 days. And if you generate a lot of traffic to Kickstarter, they're more likely to highlight you as a popular project. So after day 3, we were consistently on the top 3 projects if you search by Salt Lake City or search by Utah. And you're only going to get there if you generate traffic to your site first. So the more you can do that, the more Kickstarter will highlight you and the more traffic will receive from that end of things. So Facebook, like 26% of our hits came from Facebook, and that's 26% of total, not just the external sources. So that was our biggest single source of traffic to our site. Direct traffic just from emails. If I have ever had a conversation with you electronically, you got an email about my Kickstarter project. So our insurance agent and my mechanic and everyone I know that I have their email address got an email about me trying to sell bugs. Online media, we were in Salt Lake Tribune, City Weekly, Huffington Post, and that was not as big as some of these other hits that we got, but certainly generated a bit of traffic, and then online blogs. So this I want to highlight. This was somebody, a reporter friend of mine helped me with this timeline. So I really encourage you to sit down and take a calendar with 6 months on it or whatever you need and map out your project. So if you're going to start we started on June 12th. So if you're going to start on June 12th, and you want to have your project be in a printed newspaper, you need to notify them 2 to 4 weeks prior to that. And that's minimum, because it just takes time for them to run it through their editor and get in line for the next publication. So start your PR. We started our PR before we even started our video, which was sort of a flaw in that I've never made a video before. We kind of had to rush it through, but we told people, newspapers, hey, we're starting our project on June 12th, first ever insect energy bar, blah, blah, blah. And then we started getting going on making our project, knowing that it was going to take that much lag time. Online media, a little shorter, but still a significant lag time. 1 to 2 weeks. Blogs, much more closer to the date. So we developed a database of everyone we wanted to target. We did all our own PR. I just wrote a 1-page blurb. I wrote kind of 3 of them for different markets we were trying to hit: fitness category, outdoor category, and a water conservation category. So those 3 categories, I developed a list of all the contact names for every blogger, every newspaper, TV organization, who I was going to hit. So just like Dave was saying, once you press launch on your Kickstarter page, that's when the real work begins. So develop that database, know how far in advance to contact people about your page. Email list, instantaneous to weeks, depending on when people read their emails. And then Facebook is very instantaneous. Twitter as well. I actually did tweet about our project, but none of my 6 Twitter followers ended up donating. So if you have more of a backing, just like Kate was saying, I think you could be very successful with that as well, but beyond me at this point. This is our 18-day project, and these numbers here, which are fairly blurry, are numbers of backers. So this was we started at night, so this day is kind of an anomaly, but day 1, this is all the emails I sent out to all family, friends, everyone I knew, trying to generate that momentum to get highlighted by Kickstarter website itself. And then some of these peaks, just like Kayla was showing, this was a Huffington Post article, we were in City Weekly, and that kind of built that momentum there. Also interesting, and this graph was put together by KickTrack, which is an organization we didn't contact. They'll track projects and pages and give you really good information throughout your project. So keep in mind this is an 18-day project, so it was a very small sample, but just days of the week, average backers, this was kind of what we expected. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are the highest traffic days. We kind of experienced that on our Facebook page, social media, just people at work on Monday, Tuesday, just bored and surfing the internet, I guess. So we launched on Monday, or we tried to launch on Monday. It actually took some time to get approved by Kickstarter. We ended up launching on a Wednesday, but nonetheless, kind of knowing that your biggest days come in the beginning and the end, I think it'd be strategic, and I read this advice to strategically put both those beginning and those end dates at some of the higher traffic days. And then another thing of note is Sunday and Saturday, 2 lowest days. So online media, social media kind of shuts down over the weekend, it seems, to some extent. And oops, you can kind of see that in ours as well. It's Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday. Just interesting, I thought. I don't know. Okay, so last 3 things here. Like I said, the 3 pillars to success, I think, are really tell your story well, develop incentives that are going to make people want to donate to you, and then develop some sort of PR plan to get exposure to your page. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Matt. We have some time for a few questions for this panel. Let's start right here. Would you mind standing and just announce your question?
Yes. We're in the middle of doing a reality gold TV show, and it's been self-funded. We're about 80% done, and our financial backer, we have one financial backer, he got hit by an IRS audit and we are out of money. We're stopped dead in our tracks. And I love this thing. I think our little situation will fit perfectly, but is there anybody, how do we do this promotional campaign? Is there anybody that we can ask to, or any place we can go to get?
So the campaign for the Kickstarter program, how would you actually do the campaign?
Well, how would we promote? How would we get, I mean, I think our product will sell, but I don't know how to get the word out. I mean, I could probably get, you know, maybe 100 people, but I mean.
So let's see, I mean, all of you did it yourselves, right? And you all did your own campaign, and you all did social media, or email, or blogging. Go ahead.
So we wrote our own press releases, and then we just went through.
What do you mean by press release?
It's just a one-page document that explains what you're doing, that any blogger, reporter, journalist can cut and paste, and it will flow into their story. You want to make it super simple. And then we went through a website called prweb.com, and we just paid like $400 for first press release, and it was syndicated over 10,000 times.
Ah, thank you.
And then, but I've also had friends that have done Kickstarter campaigns similar to these gentlemen, where they establish a list of blogs that are within their target space, and when they go live, they send an email to all those blogs, hoping that in return they'll repost their content for their readers and followers, which have helped them.
So the one thing I would take away, because I want to catch a couple other questions in the back. These gentlemen, I think, did a lot of research, did a lot of background work. They understood the blogs. They did research on mailing lists. They found PR.com. They did some of those things. So it's not, can't leave thinking, oh, this will just easily happen. There's some preparation that we need to go through. And I really like those suggestions. There was another hand at the back. A couple other questions. Please, right here.
On Kickstarter, you have to hit your goal before you get any money. On some other sites like Rocket Hub, you don't have to do that. Why would you want to go with Kickstarter where you've got that limitation?
So I think this is an excellent question. If you didn't hear it, there is another competing site called Rocket Hub, a little different set of conditions. Any evaluation that any of you did, Kickstarter versus the other sites? David?
One simple reason is because,
Push the button.
let's try this one. One simple reason is because almost everyone in this room has heard of Kickstarter, and almost no one in this room has heard of Rocket Hub. So Kickstarter just has a particular critical mass right now, and the numbers that Craig presented earlier demonstrates millions of people a day. I can't really comment on the all or nothing strategy and how it works at Rocket Hub, but Kickstarter just has such a huge following that if you can work within that all or nothing strategy, it still is, I think, the only game in town, although other sites like Indiegogo sure are gaining presence.
Actually, I'll just respond to that too, because we considered Indiegogo as well. Indiegogo gives you your money if you fall short, but they take a higher percentage. So they take 9% as opposed to 5% if you don't reach your goal. And then there's just something to be said for helping you reach that end. That provides a lot of motivation for people to literally help you towards that finish line. So if they know you're getting your money anyway, it's a lot less incentive to really build that momentum.
Good response.
And one more thing, there's like 100 different crowdfunding platforms. And one of my buddies actually did a crowdfunding successful campaign on Kickstarter, and then figured out he needed to raise more money. And so he did a follow-up crowdfunding project on Indiegogo, and he was successful in both of his campaigns. And one interesting tidbit that we learned is that like 90% of projects that hit 30% of their funding goal are successful. So if you can hit that critical mass of 30%, you have a really high probability of being successful.
Thank you for that. There was another hand back here.
Any of you, based on the statistics that Kickstarter gave you, think that you might have reached your funding had you not done anything? Was there enough exposure momentum just from the Kickstarter people that go to that site? Did any of you, put any thought into that? I'm just curious if you might have reached it.
So for those that didn't hear the question is if I just put my project on Kickstarter, didn't do my own self-campaign, would I reach my goal?
No way. On the days that we were featured, we got much more hits from Kickstarter itself. On the few days that we weren't, plummeted.
I think that's a big takeaway from this whole panel is you've got to do something to keep it going. David, any comments?
We had the same experience. There was a direct correlation between PR that we generated and the sales that hit that day. And it was even by country. When we would get a blog coverage in Russia, our Russian orders that day spiked, or Brazil, and it was very much geographically based. And while there was a certain amount of business that was going to happen anyway, just organically, we drove the business through our PR campaign. We may have funded anyway, but not nearly to that level.
And to become a stat pick, from what we understood, that is generated by the number of people that are syndicating you. And so if you have a high level of people reposting what you want, your page, then the Kickstarter staff will place you as a popular item or a hot pick, which helps in conversions tremendously. Pat showed that 39% of his backers came from people finding him on Kickstarter. We had like 55% of our backers were found from Kickstarter, either being staff pick or hot item in the technology sector. So,
other questions, please, right here.
I would like to know the margin between the cost of producing and delivering the project and what you collected. What percentage of margin did you have on all three of you?
Well, so you're asking.
Okay, what does it cost you to produce and deliver your project? And how much did you ask for? How much margin was in there? What percent? In other words, what percent did you ask from a donation more than what it cost you to deliver?
So did you overreach on your goal? David, you've already responded. You underreached. You put up 10,000.
He's asking for reward levels and what the margin was in terms of what it costs
okay,
you.
When you do a project, you've got to deliver that project. And let's say it costs you $50 to deliver that in data. Did you ask for a $50 donation and break even, or did you ask for an $80 donation? What was that margin?
So I think the question is, when you set your incentive pricing, was it close to delivery cost, above cost, or did it have any relationship to cost?
So we, first thing that you need to understand is Kickstarter takes 5%, and then Amazon through the transaction takes in between 3 and 5%. So that's 7 to 10% taken off the top. And then what we decided to do is we wanted at least a 50% margin so that we could order 2 pods for every one that we sold, so that we could build inventory to resell after our project.
I wish ours was 50%. Our lowest incentive level was the highest picked, and we did that as kind of getting people to the site. And so our margin there was slightly below what our direct sales margins will be. And then as we went up incentives, they increased to kind of buffer for that. And so we finished with probably 30 to 40%. We're still fulfilling right now, so it's not totally figured out, but somewhere in the 30 to 40%.
And we wanted to offer it at a discount relative to what we would be selling it at retail. So our $10 winder, the small winder, we offered for $8. So from that perspective, we discounted it from retail, but we ended up in a 35, 38% margin after it was all said and done, which was a little lower than we had hoped for, but is perfectly acceptable for an introductory project.
And what's interesting about this is you're really into now pricing considerations at a very early stage in the business, margins and pricing even before customer validation. So it really advances some of those things. Please.
All of your products were retail-oriented, consumer-oriented products, and yet some aspects of those products had, you might say, a humanitarian or an emotional appeal. So I'm wondering, did you have any study or any feedback from your blogs that would indicate that you would have made sales, or rather you would have got contributions, even if they didn't have a tangible reward?
Let me add, as you begin to think about an answer, Kickstarter does have a restriction on cause-oriented funding. So you cannot go in and say, I just want to do good in the world, I need people to back me and do that. That isn't what they're about. But you had a little humanitarian twist on yours, Caleb.
Yeah. So Kickstarter is very explicit about not being charity-oriented. We had to take some of the verbiage out of our content on our page because it conflicted with their guidelines of being a charity. But I don't believe that the charity or the humanitarian aspect was make or break for us hitting our funding goal. All 10 of the highest funding projects on Kickstarter don't have anything to do with humanitarian. Pebble doesn't have any sort of humanitarian aspect. It's a cool watch that interfaces with your smartphone. And so I don't think necessarily that it's make or break. I think that's just something personally that we want to do as a company.
Question right there, please.
After the incentives, what more do the backers get?
So do you have any?
Touch the money. Amazon collects the money, Kickstarter takes their 5%, and then the funds are released to you 14 days after your project closes. So Kickstarter, if there's a scam, they have no liability, and so there's really no legal recourse for investors with the people that they back, that they fund.
About near our time. Let me catch two last questions, yours and yours. Please go ahead. Yes.
If you're going to start a new project, what would you allocate time-wise to actually do it right? From start of the PR campaign to close the funding, what would your guesstimate be on building the project time-wise?
So if you had to do it over and do it right, how much time would you give yourself from beginning to end?
I think we all three had somewhat different experiences here. We had a 40-day campaign, an 18-day campaign, and a 30-day campaign. All of the press out there will say shorter is better, and we saw those statistics demonstrated here in several different ways. Our curve went like this, and I think we left a lot of money on the table by limiting it to 40 days, and we would have certainly raised a lot more money had we gone beyond the 40 days, but I think that's contrary to the popular statistics.
And how much lead time before you launch the campaign would you give yourself?
Yeah, and that all just depends on what kind of project you're doing, how much experience you have with video production, what sort of PR experience you have, what sort of PR connections you have. It kind of varies, but we definitely would have lengthened our project as well. We had a couple stories come out the day after we closed. We had a lot of emails saying, hey, I missed the bus. We directed those to sales, but at the same time, we wanted a short project because, and this depends on the length as well, we wanted that money to get going with our business. We had done a product launch. We had said, hey, we're out here, and we've already had a kind of copycat, like David was mentioning, and so we wanted to get going with a viable business.
In terms of actual time put in for developing the project, we spent about 3 months. And David, he actually built a video with one of his buddies. He spent about 100 hours of shooting / video editing just on our video, which may slightly be in excess. That's totally up to you, but that was with 3 to 4 people working pretty religiously on it.
We spent 2 days making our video, and that was it. We were ready to roll. But I did spend a week getting our PR plan in place, so we took a very different approach.
And you have to also understand that Dave's an engineer and slightly a perfectionist. So
this is the last question right up front.
Is there any requirements on delivery date after you get funds and after you collect? Like, if you have tooling and it takes 10 weeks to tool up.
Kickstarter doesn't have any guidelines around that. You can put it off as long as you can, but the biggest problem with Kickstarter right now is almost every campaign is delivering late. And the later you go, the fuller your inbox is. And if you commit to deliver on July 1st, 2 weeks before July 1st, your inbox starts to fill. Where's my product? Where's my product? Well, on July 2nd and every day thereafter, if you deliver late, you will have a full inbox and a full-time job of responding to why you're late.
So give it a little bit of buffer.
Give it buffer, and just like everything else in the world, it will take twice as long as you expect it to. So yes, be conservative about your time frame, your delivery commitment.
Yeah, and it's up to you. For every incentive, you post an estimated delivery date. So our first one was a month later, our second one was 2 months later, and we have ones that we said we'd fulfill in September. So it's up to you to decide. They don't obligate you to any time.
I know you still have a few more questions. Our panel will be up here. We invite you to come mingle. Great topic. This is one of the interesting new ways of launching, testing a business. I like it because it's fast, it's easy, it reduces a lot of the risk. Great success stories and really well done. A round of applause for all of you. Thank you all for coming.